So today I want to talk a little bit about my MMO experiences over the last, well, probably a couple of years or so, because I have spent quite a bit of time playing various MMO games, looking for the right one, and so there's kind of a story there, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on really all of them as I've gone through from one to the next, sort of looking to see which one would be fun. Um, so first of all, I do remember probably around 2015 or something like that. I did install Star Trek Online. It just looked cool enough that I wound up clicking the button to download the game. At that time, I didn't really even know what a MMO was exactly. It seemed vaguely appealing, and I was really not thinking that much about video games anyway at that time. I was more focused on long hours at work or whatever else I was doing. So I installed Star Trek Online. I made a character. I didn't even get through the tutorial area. I just lost interest and forgot about it. And then quite a few years passed. And fast forward to 2020 or so, and I started wanting to get back into MMOs. Now, I had started playing Cities Skylines again and getting more into the city builders. Then I started playing, well, let's see, I started playing a game called Township on the cell phone, which let you kind of build up a little town, and you would do it collaboratively with other people in the sense that you could see what other people were doing, kind of like a Farmville sort of experience. But that exposed me to this idea that it's cool playing a game where the progress you make is something that other people can see. Like I could go see a town that somebody else made, and they could see the town I made, and we could be in our little kind of a guild thing. And I liked that. It was a very light experience, but it also was kind of a little bit of a MMO sort of experience. And then I moved on to a game called Rise of Kingdoms, and that's also a cell phone game by a, I think, Chinese developer. In any case, you would build a city and you'd have your little fort and you'd kind of play the timers game and keep on trying to get more troops and things like that. And then you'd rally together with other players and you could have kind of characters you'd collect, like commanders or whatever, that would command an army. And so there was a little bit of that sense of, make a character and play with other people sort of thing. Of course, not a true MMO, very pay to win. And so before long, I lost interest in that. And then I saw Black Desert online. It looked kind of cool. Like, just seemed appealing. Like just this open world that's beautiful and sexy characters and the whole nine yards. Just seemed like a really cool sort of thing. And I remember I started playing that game and I was underwhelmed by something about the interface and the graphics. It just seemed off. The the graphics looked really beautiful in a way, and yet they also just lacked a certain polish and crispness that made me feel like it was muddy. And the UI was just awful. It felt like there was tons of buttons everywhere and very little explaining of what anything did. And it just seemed sloppy. And it also kind of looked like there might be some translation problems between maybe an Asian language and English, because the dialogue that I did see at the beginning in the sort of tutorial part of the game was really underwhelming too. And when you add it all together, like the NPCs just seemed like they were very strangely animated. That stood out to me. It seemed like it was just really clunky. Nothing looked natural or appealing about the game. So before very long at all, I lost interest in that. It sounded cool, but the reality was everything about it, from picking a server to how you controlled your character to how the UI worked to how the characters were modeled, it just did not really do anything for me. So I had heard about RuneScape, and that's kind of the famous MMO. And I guess that's really where I started in earnest to think I want to get into this. So I installed RuneScape. I tried RuneScape 3, and what really turned me off of that was that the graphics did not feel very polished. It felt, even RuneScape 3 felt like it was meant to be a web browser game. It just didn't quite seem um, it didn't wow me in any way. And I recall there being some sort of like puzzles that were just a little bit confusing to me, and I was barely really into the game anyway, so I kind of lost interest. And somebody said this a while ago, and I really think it's true. That game is a lot like a theme park, like literally a theme park. You have so many different things to do, points of interest, but they're all right next to each other. So it doesn't really feel like you're part of a vast open world where you can do whatever you want. It feels like everything's just really condensed. And don't get me wrong, it's a nice game, and it's probably a game that I didn't give a fair enough shot. But there's also something to be said for if you don't feel like you're having fun and you have to look for evidence of why it's fun, then is it really fun? Like maybe it's fun for somebody else. I don't know. So anyway, I moved on from RuneScape 3, and I decided that I think I wanted to give Albion Online a try at that time, because there are these advertisements that are this deep voiced guy who has a really awesome voice narrating and talking about how you can be whatever you want to be in Albion Online. And that really appealed to me. I remember, I think I got hit with that advertisement while I was on YouTube. And the thought of just being able to collect resources, gather resources, make things, and be part of this interconnected economy. That really drug me in, and it appealed to me a lot. So I started playing Albion Online, and then I realized, it is a fully PvP game. There's a certain level of toxicity that comes along with that. There's the sense that the graphics are quite nice, but it is still top-down isometric. It doesn't feel like it's really that high fantasy um, MMO with amazing scope and lore and things like that. So in some ways, I liked Albion Online a lot because it does give you that freedom to just be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. And yet, it also feels like it's missing something. It's not that theme park MMO experience at all. It's its own unique thing. So I've come and gone from Albion Online more than once over the years since. But Albion Online's continued to be a game that I like to dabble in, and I'm not hardcore into it by any means, and yet I always find myself coming back. It's cool the way there's a sense of ownership and realness associated with all the items and resources in the game. You can pretty easily understand what everything in the game does, and there's a lot of little simple systems that together stack up to make a pretty complex game, but it really feels very intuitive and simple. The UI is beautiful, and I could go on. And there's good things, there's bad things, but Albion Online managed to really stay in my mind for years, and got to be one of those permanent games where I did not stop playing. And if I did stop playing, I always came back because I missed it after a bit. But I did leave Albion Online over and over again, looking at other titles, thinking, well, okay, let's give World of Warcraft a try, which seemed cool for a bit. And then something about it just kind of lost me. Like, I guess the graphics in World of Warcraft started to strike me as really, really dated in some areas. I would look at that and think, my goodness, this is just not very elegant at all. In some cases, it can be a beautiful game, and in other cases, you can look at that and think, my goodness, this is not a very good looking game at all. So, I tried to get into the lore of World of Warcraft. I watched the World of Warcraft movie. I tried to listen to lore videos on YouTube. I even downloaded an audiobook of one of the novels that somebody wrote about the World of Warcraft world. And the more I tried to get into it, the more I realized I just did not care for the aesthetic or the lore or anything about the game, really. And, I never really made a conscious decision to quit. I remember one day I bought a mount in World of Warcraft. There's a mouse that flies because I thought it looked cool. And I was trying to be into the game, and then, the mouse mount was kind of the last thing I ever did. I lost interest in the game, and I uninstalled it and never missed it at all. So from there, I tried Final Fantasy XIV, and there were some things I liked about it. I liked the way the characters looked, and I kind of liked the story to a point, but it also felt pretty boring. And I didn't want it to be boring because the community seems really awesome, but the truth was it felt boring. And the more I have looked at this, the more I've realized the reason why it felt so boring to me is because what I love the most about MMOs is the ability to just get out there and explore an open world. And Final Fantasy XIV does a really good job of giving people the opportunity to go to group dungeons together. And the housing is really cool in Final Fantasy XIV, but it's also gate kept behind a lot of grinding and leveling and competition you have to do before you can even own a house in Final Fantasy XIV. So if you have to play for hundreds of hours and you're still not the owner of a home yet, well, like how hard does it need to be, So there's things I really liked about Final Fantasy XIV, but ultimately there was something just a little bit off about the game to me. It just didn't quite speak to me. And one reason it didn't speak to me is because the vibe of the game's lore is just not quite traditional fantasy. Albion Online, for example, really harkens to a magical medieval setting. And if you think about traditional Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of a setting, it's kind of like that. It's a certain degree of magic. It's basically like medieval European kind of. There's a certain look to it, and Final Fantasy XIV just ain't it. So I just kind of, I tried to like the game. I played the tutorial. I tried it. I lost interest in it. I tried it again. I would see, popular streamers playing the game, and I thought, man, this looks like it should be fun. But it just wasn't really fun to me. And a big part of that was just because I am that resource gathering kind of a player. I might just not even want to do the quests and just spend my day clicking nodes, gathering random stuff because that is fun in and of itself, So that's where I was at. And after a while, Final Fantasy XIV kind of went the way of World of Warcraft. And as much as I'd tried to want to enjoy that game, I eventually realized I wasn't having fun. And you can only try to see it through for so long until you start to just think, you know what? I'm having to force myself to play this game because I'm not even enjoying it. And so that's where I was at. Not really having fun with Final Fantasy XIV, moved on from that, and I had heard about Guild Wars 2, which seemed pretty cool because Guild Wars 2 was a buy it once, play it forever kind of a model. And I really liked that because I was starting to feel like subscriptions seem like a really, a really pricey proposition when you compare them to other AAA games that don't have subscriptions. Like you can get games and you play you pay $60, you get a game, and then you go to the MMO space, you pay like $50 and then you pay $10 a month or $15 a month for the rest of the time you play the game. It just feels like kind of a questionable practice in a way. The way live service games, pull a subscription out of your wallet all the time. Um, so that was kind of my thought process. I want to try Guild Wars 2, and I'd seen the character creator and thought, oh, I really like the look of this game. It has that kind of a watercolor look to it. So I got into it. I played to level 80 on a character and played through the main story quest for the base game, and then what kind of turned me off of that was that I realized there's not really a lot of diversity in the kind of gear that you can wear in terms of how it looks in the game. And it just doesn't really make a lot of sense for you to be trying really hard to get some specific look and gear and then realize that whatever cool thing you want is going to probably be in the cash shop. So what's the point of even really grinding economy in Guild Wars 2 when you're going to probably wind up just buying some skin you want out of the cash shop? So I liked the game. I liked the voice acting in it. I liked the fact that it really focused on kind of that open world exploration. And I have to say Guild Wars 2 is a good game, but it also felt kind of lackluster. It kind of felt like it was trying to be Final Fantasy 14 and never really quite made it. Like there are a lot of players that were Final Fantasy 14 players and they just pop into Guild Wars 2 as like a side time killer when there was no content for Final Fantasy 14. Like that's kind of the vibe I got. It didn't seem like it didn't really seem like the game I would want to sink tons and tons of time into anymore. So that also kind of petered out. Now being free, I would jump into it and then I would try to convince myself I was having fun because, this is a free to play title. I don't have to spend any more money on it to play it. But it just wasn't really quite doing it for me. And during all this time, I continued to, however reluctantly, return to Albion Online. And so I was playing Albion Online pretty much through this entire time period. Um, Albeit casually, but I was still dabbling in Albion Online. And so after Guild Wars 2, somewhere in there, I did give New World a try. Now, I bought New World on the very first day it came out. I had that game, and I was kind of excited about it because I saw that you can chop trees and stuff in New World, and it's kind of like Albion Online. You're out there collecting resources, and that's a main part of the game. And I thought the other thing about New World that seemed super cool is it's not a full loot PvP game. So you're going to have the benefit of resource gathering and you're going to have the amazing graphics in the game, but you're not going to have the toxic community that Albion Online is known for, and you're not going to have the full loot PvP to worry about. So I thought maybe New World would be kind of my new favorite. Maybe it would be kind of that perfect blend between a theme park and a sandbox. And I did like a lot about the game, but there were some things that really just didn't sit well with me. Like the fact that you start playing the game and the character creation is the worst I've ever seen, probably in just about any MMO. Like the characters, you can't make them look sexy. You can't make them even look male or female. Like they got these gender neutral looking characters, and then after you make your character, I mean, like there's not any like male hairstyles and female ones. It's just like random generic hairstyle, number 1, number 2, number 3, or whatever. Like they have got like purple hair and weird looking haircuts you would never see in that sort of a setting, and then they don't have like normal ones that you would actually want. It's just like they put no thought into the character creator, or maybe they even put effort into making it as ambiguous as possible. I don't know, but you can't even change your character's hairstyle after you make the character, and the devs oddly have continued to update the game for years after it came out, and they still never got around to giving characters the ability to change their um, basic characteristics. Like you can't even change your hairstyle. You can't even buy it. Like that's just not a thing. Like not a thing in New World. Not going to be a thing. And it was just that sense that like I don't know. Like it felt too Amazon. That's what it was, because like you got a pronoun selector in the game. So that's fine. I'm all for being inclusive or whatever, but all right, so you thought about this to figure out if you want to do like the they them pronouns in this game. Like that was important enough to you, but to allow people to change the hairstyle of their characters or make them look the way they want, like that was too much. Like that's asking too much to, give people the basic things that they'd be looking for. Like there's just something about it. And then the economy, it didn't feel legit at all. It really felt a lot more like a theme park economy. It wasn't a sandbox, because truth is you can't have the true sandbox without the full loot PvP or something equivalent to it. Because without full loot PvP, you don't have a simulated supply and demand system that actually is balanced or even slightly balanced. So, New World missed on being a questless sandbox, and it also missed on being a theme park because it didn't have any lore, it didn't have any story, and everything about the game's design seemed unpersonal, like it was just a bunch of people at Amazon that decided they wanted to buy some talent and create a AAA title without any passion to drive it, to begin with. So and I think New World wound up being something everyone had high hopes for, and then when they saw it, realized New World is not really all that special. It has some good things going for it, but why do you want to be invested in this world when there's not really anything, there's not really any fundamentals to back it that make you feel like it's something you're connected to. So New World went the way of all the others. Played it, and then I've gone back to it from time to time just because, it's free to play. Like once you have it, you have it. And I do like that. But then it's kind of like what I was saying about Guild Wars 2. It's playing the game because it doesn't cost anything, not because it's the best. And then I started to think, well, my time is valuable, so I want to play the game I really actually have fun with the most. And so somewhere around in that time period, I started playing Lord of the Rings online. Oddly, because somebody had told me about Lord of the Rings Online, who I met in New World, and they were saying you should try that game. So I did, and I was amazed by Lord of the Rings Online because it has a seamless open world, and there's a few things I really like about the game, like the fact that when you level up, then after a while, the low level mobs don't attack you unless you attack them. So it's a lot easier to just chill and explore and enjoy the vibe of the world. So there is some stuff like that I really enjoyed um, about Lord of the Rings Online. And then of course, Lord of the Rings is an amazing franchise, and so I kind of liked the game just because it was Lord of the Rings. But then I also kind of realized that it does have very dated graphics. And I don't really enjoy the tab target combat very much compared to other combat styles. I like the way it feels to use weapons and give your character commands in Albion Online a lot better. And I also actually like the combat in New World quite a bit. The weapons felt like they had weight and impact to them, and I enjoyed that. So I didn't really like the combat in Lord of the Rings Online. I didn't like the parts of it that feel very dated graphics-wise. And then there were other things that I really did enjoy about it, like the fact it was a Lord of the Rings theme, which is huge. And yet, with that, I just realized I don't have unlimited time to play every cool game there is. So I kind of gotta pick, you know, pick one. So that led me to, I guess, kind of run out of additional titles to try. I was still playing Albion Online, still feeling like Albion is cool, but I miss the theme park experience. I miss the sense of questing and that, the depth of fantasy and lore. I did try Eve Online and it felt too impersonal. And I think the space setting is just not really what I'm looking for in an MMO. I'd much rather play something like Stellaris if I wanted a space experience in a computer game, um, or something more first person. So Eve just felt too spacey and too much like it has a huge learning curve to where you have to become a master of Microsoft Excel in order to enjoy the game. So I moved on to Elder Scrolls Online. And Elder Scrolls Online feels like it has just the right atmosphere to me. It's got this traditional fantasy vibe to it. It feels like it's the spirit of something like Dungeons and Dragons. It's got really polished graphics that all around look pretty good. It has the open world exploration. It has fully voiced quests and lots of them. There's so much going for Elder Scrolls Online, and it has a huge franchise to back it. I really like the game because I realize, there's people of all different ages, all different types of folks that play that game. It's so cool, It just, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, Elder Scrolls Online is still going to appeal to you because it's still that same vibe of kind of almost a lower fantasy sort of a style than something like Final Fantasy XIV. Um, I like the style of ESO. I like the compared to other MMOs at least. I like the quests of ESO. All in all, I like the exploration. I like the way you have these trading guilds. So when you add in a few third-party tools, you can have a sense of playing the economy in ESO, definitely. Now it's not in the same way as a game like Albion Online, but it is still cool, and money still feels like it has value in the game world. And then there's things like player housing that actually work well. You don't have to grind for 2 years in order to get a house in the Elder Scrolls Online. There's things about that game I've come to really enjoy and appreciate. And ESO has felt like a pretty good theme park game. Um, Now, I do like Albion Online still because it's casual for me. It's really accessible. If I'm not at a computer, I can still play Albion Online on my phone. But then ESO is a great companion to it, I've found, because it lets me experience a more traditional fantasy RPG environment. And I think that the two games are different enough that they don't really compete with each other. And I've kind of just come to learn, it's fine to play one or the other or both and just enjoy them for what they are, accept them for their differences. And it's kind of true that one is what the other one isn't, and vice versa. So I think between the two games, they really scratch that MMO itch, and they both give me that sense of being able to just log into the game and do whatever I feel like doing. I don't have to, do specific quests or specific content or anything like that. I don't feel really channeled in any particular direction. And that makes me want to log into those games more because I can play in an open-ended way. And I think that's really the biggest thing that has turned me off of a lot of MMOs. It's that you get this advertisement that's telling you you can go into this amazing virtual world and you can be anything you want to be. And then after a little while, you discover the truth, which is that the game's channeling you in a specific direction. And the only thing you're really getting is repetition. But you're not really getting any of that sense of freedom that you kind of wanted. And so it's almost, it's almost a deception between the promises of advertising and the actual reality of playing the game. And I think Elder Scrolls Online and Albion Online both do kind of a good job, at least on the part of the devs, to make the game something that you can just log into and play in an open-ended way, however you feel you would like to play. Like Albion Online, the truth is, if you want to just play the economy or play, have your player island or whatever you're doing, you can do that. If you want to play, more hardcore, you can definitely do that too. And people tell you, here's one way you should play or not play or whatever, but at the end of the day, you can play it however you want, Same thing with ESO. You could play the game just to do quests. You could play it for PvP. You could play it for player housing. Heck, you could play the game just because you're a role player and you're not even doing any of the questing material. You're just in some kind of a role-playing guild with other people that do that. So, there's just a lot of different ways you can play the game, and that's something I like about both games. I think one of the most important things you can find in terms of MMO enjoyment and longevity is the ability to just play how you want and to feel like if you want to put a lot of time into the game, you can do that. Or if you don't want to put much time in at all and you just want to, maybe take a break for a little while, you don't feel like you're missing out. Because as soon as you get into that loop of being bound to the game, feeling like you need to log in, it stops being fun. It starts to be a chore. And then at that point, why are you even doing it, right? So, all in all, I've tried, to some degree, I've tried most of the MMOs out there. And subjectively, I would say that my thoughts on this are that Albion Online and ESO are my favorites. And a lot of the other titles do something that that those two don't. But overall, I would say that those are two amazing games that, for me, as a person who likes open world exploration, are probably the best fits in general. Now, as an honorable mention, I have to say Final Fantasy XIV has an amazing community. It has a lot of amazing features. Its UI is nice. Its character emotes are nice. Its player housing, if you can actually get a player house, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of reasons to love Final Fantasy XIV, but if you don't want to if you don't want to do just quests and dungeons, and you want to just be able to play the game without feeling obligated to do a specific type of content, I don't know that that game really winds up being as good as some people crack it up to be. That's just my 2 cents, my experience. So that's my story. That's pretty much how I got to where I'm at. And if I've learned anything from MMOs, it's that you're not going to have fun with them if you take them too seriously. And that's why I'm a fan of being as casual about them as possible, and just play them for the fun of playing them, and don't feel like you need to make any particular progress. If you compare yourself to anybody, compare yourself to yourself. Don't try to be the #1 player, because MMOs are not going to be that sort of an arena where you're going to be able to compete with the best or the highest tier player in the game. Nor are you going to have a better time by doing so. So that's about it. I'd recommend that people probably try just about every game out there and then make up your mind for yourself. But if you are going to get into MMOs, or if you already are and you're trying to figure out which one's best, my advice to you would be, you've got to ask yourself, first of all, the honest question: am I having fun? And if you are not having fun, then it doesn't matter how good the game is on paper. You probably need to let it go and then do something else that you really are enjoying. It's just that simple. Because if you're not enjoying the experience, it is a game at the end of the day. You don't have to play it. There is no benchmark that establishes you're successful if you play this game a certain amount of time, or because you've played it a bunch before, you should play it a bunch in the future. Like, there's no such deal. So you should just ask yourself the honest question: do you feel like playing it? And if there's too many days when you feel like you don't really want to play it, and you're not, then unsubscribe. And maybe you never come back, because maybe there's other things that you can do that you enjoy more. Totally possible, and there's no shame in that. Or maybe that game that you didn't think was all that great, after a few months or something, then you kind of feel like you want to play it again because you missed something about it, and then maybe you jump back in, and maybe third time's the charm or something. It's possible. So don't close the door and think just because you've closed the door, it has to stay closed forever. Quitting for today does not mean quitting forever. And um, and I think we do try to put ourselves into buckets and say, well, this game's really good, or this one sucks. And the truth is, they all have something good about them, and they all suck in one way or another. And sometimes the best way to just not feel like you're having a bad experience is to not expect so much, and accept that you don't have to find that one perfect game that's going to be everything you ever dreamed of, everything you ever wanted. You can just enjoy them for what they are, and then if you start to feel bored or you don't feel like doing that, then well, do something else, or do nothing, or take a break from games, or switch over to playing real-time strategy games or city builders, or some other thing that just interests you. I don't know. So good luck in your journey to find that perfect MMO for you. This has been my experience with MMOs. Just figured I'd share it because I do think it's interesting, and I have spent a lot of time thinking about them, and I still do spend a lot of time thinking about them because I think they're quite fascinating, and just because they're kind of little model societies, and communities, and economies, and political alliances that all exist in this digital space. I think MMOs have done what the metaverse tried to do, unsuccessfully, I will add. Um, But there's something amazing and magical about the idea that you can log onto your computer and you can go into a virtual world, and you just don't know. You don't know who you might meet. You don't know what you might discover, because you're never going to log in and have the exact same experience as what you've had before, because the people are always changing, and that's really the allure of these games. That there is a human element. Even if you play solo, there's still a human element that makes it feel real in a way that a single player game just never really will. So, with that, I will end. Thank you very much for watching, and very best wishes to you. Goodbye.